Hello, I'm taking on a challenge to beat every playable Nintendo-published video game. In this series, I take a deep dive into each game in the challenge, going over its history, summarizing my playthrough, and ending with a review. The game we are taking a look at today is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Alright, we're at the final Play Choice 10 release of Nintendo's Summer 1989 lineup. For one final time, here's the ad that showed that Nintendo sold and published this version of the game themselves. Wait a second, this is that one game that's infamous for its difficulty, isn't it? The one with the water level. Well, before we jump into the game itself, let's take a look at how this game came to be. The idea arose from the US branch of Konami, and it was conceived by a manager named Emil Heickamp. One day, Emil was watching the 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TV show. It was then that he got the idea to make a video game based on the franchise, and he was able to convince Konami's headquarters in Japan to greenlight the project. So, Konami got into direct contact with the creators of the TMNT comics, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. Kevin and Peter told Konami exactly what they wanted the game to be like. Konami agreed and even asked them to be very involved in the creation process. While the final game was largely based on the TV show, we can see some inspirations from the comics too. For example, even though each of the Turtles' masks have unique colors in-game, the cover has them all with the red masks from the comics. In fact, the cover was actually just a reuse of their 1987 reprint of the 4th issue of their comics. Speaking of the cover, didn't I say this was a Konami game? Why aren't they on the cover anywhere? And who on earth is Ultra Games? Well, as I've touched on in previous videos, Nintendo of America was very strict with third parties on the NES since they didn't want to make the same mistakes that led to the video game crash of 1983. One restriction was that Nintendo of America limited publishers to just 5 games per year on the NES. This was done to combat shovelware and oversaturation of the market. But here's the thing, Konami was killing it on the NES. They were pumping out smash hit after smash hit, and even Nintendo knew this. Apparently, Konami executives met with Arakawa, the president of Nintendo of America, to discuss their desire to release more games on the system. In the end, Arakawa decided to give Konami a second license, but they could only use the license under a different name. So, Konami founded Ultra Games to serve strictly as a secondary publishing label in the US. This was such a silly workaround that other companies took notice, and they weren't all that happy about it. So, after all that, Konami released Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Japan in May of 1989, and Ultra Games released it in the US soon after. It ended up becoming a huge hit, selling over 4 million copies. However, it also pretty quickly became known as one of the toughest games on the NES. Kevin Eastman said that they were constantly asked by fans at conventions why the game was so hard, and all they could say was that they couldn't even beat the game themselves. In particular, the game had an infamous water level that filtered many, but I'll go more into that part when I cover my playthrough. The exact date a game first hits the arcades is essentially impossible to find, but at the very least, that ad I showed earlier was in a magazine that came out only a few months after TMNT launched in the US. So while I want to say the game's knockout success was why it made it to the Play Choice 10, it's also possible that Konami already had high hopes for it and was working with Nintendo to get the game on the Play Choice 10 as soon as possible. Humorously, later that year, Konami released an arcade original that was also titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it was totally different from the NES game. To make matters even more confusing, this arcade title eventually got ported to the NES under the name Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. That one also made its way to the Play Choice 10, so I'll cover it more in a future video. For now though, let's shift gears and take a look at my time with the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles NES game. The game opens with a cinematic showing all the turtles, so of course, we've got Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Donatello. It also showed a quick shot of Shredder holding April captive. I guess it's up to the Ninja Turtles to save her. After I pressed start, I was dropped into level 1. Right away, we can see that this game has top-down sections and 2D sections, almost like Zelda 2. I went right into the sewers and started playing around with the mechanics. At any point, you can switch between the 4 turtles, and each one uses his signature weapon. Leonardo has his katanas, Raphael has his sais, Michelangelo has nunchucks, and Donatello has his trusty bow staff. Each weapon has different range and damage outputs, and while I'm not entirely sure of their exact stats, just know that Donatello's bow staff is busted. It does a ton of damage, and it has great range. Oh, the Ninja Turtles all have their own health bars, and their health can be refilled by finding and eating some pizza. If a turtle loses all of his health, well, I'll go over that later. On this pause screen, we can also see the map of level 1. This map just shows the top-down area, and each of those white squares is a 2D sewer section. Splinter also shows up in the corner and gives random advice and tutorials. So at first, I just spent some time in the underground sections, and I suddenly encountered a boss. That was fast. I don't know my 1987 TMNT lore super well, I grew up with the 2003 series, but I think these guys are the villains Rocksteady and Bebop. Rocksteady just stood up in the corner with the captive April, while Bebop charged around left and right. I took a good amount of hits from the guy, but I eventually took him out with Donatello. Well, that wasn't too bad. Is this the end of stage 1 already? Nope, Rocksteady escaped with April, and there was still more to go. So pretty quickly after this, I learned a vital strategy. Pizza items reappear whenever you leave and re-enter a 2D section. This makes it super easy to farm back to full health, especially if they put one of these items near the entrance to the sewers. Nice, I was filled back up already. I encountered some kind of frog mini-boss dude after this, and yeah, I'm not sure who this is supposed to be. In fact, I think it's just a glorified normal enemy. If you can't tell yet, this game just loves to throw enemies at you. I didn't really notice it right away, but there was usually multiple different pools of enemies in each level, and it seemed like the game would occasionally just swap which pool of enemies it was pulling from. After a bit more exploring, I found the actual boss of stage 1. Surprise, surprise, it's Rocksteady. This dude started jumping around and blasting me with a gun, but he was still pretty easy in the end. Would you look at that, I rescued April already. That was fast. She told me that the Foot Clan was going to destroy the dam and I needed to stop them. If you didn't know, the Foot Clan is the name of the evil ninja team and it's led by the main antagonist of the Ninja Turtles, Shredder. Wait a second, I've heard about an infamous dam level before. This one supposedly filtered millions of young children back in the day. Oh boy, here we go. So unfortunately, life doesn't refill between stages. I ended up losing Raphael near the beginning during a 2D section. This sent me back to the most recent overworld section and it simply said that Raphael had been caught. Is there going to be some way to rescue him? Later in the section, I also found this boomerang item. This gave me a limited amount of boomerang projectiles and only the turtle that picked it up could use it. Okay, at the end of this section was a really stupid pit. No matter what I did, I couldn't jump over it. What the heck? Am I getting filtered already? I haven't even made it to the infamous water part yet. I lost Michelangelo here since I kept having to walk back and forth through a bunch of enemies over and over while I try to figure this jump out. I ended up making it, but it was a super tight jump. Jeez, why did they make that one so brutal? Okay, here we go, the edge of the dam. Time for the notorious water section. So here your objective is to find all of the bombs underwater before the time runs out. What makes this part tricky is that there's obstacles everywhere, and this dang electric seaweed is just so hard to get through safely. My health was already super low, so it didn't take me too long to lose my remaining turtles. Game over. So what happens on a game over? Well, for now I was able to continue. This simply reset me to the start of the level, and I had all of my turtles back. Okay, at least I can try again. So not to toot my own horn here too much, but I didn't even find this level all that hard in the end. Barely at all even. I did lose 2 of my turtles to this stage learning some of its gimmicks, but in the end, I didn't find it to be nearly as bad as the internet made it out to be. Now, there was one room that was pretty much impossible to get through unscathed, but as long as I managed the health of my turtles properly, I was able to get to the end just fine. In this attempt, I took some hits here and there, but I managed to figure out where all the bombs were, and level 2 was complete. Okay, on to stage 3, although I've only got 2 turtles left. Between stages, there was an actual cutscene. While we were distracted at the dam, Shredder captured Master Splinter. Oh shoot, I guess I've got to go rescue him next. At the start of stage 3, I got wrecked by this rolling vehicle out of nowhere. It flattened Donatello like a pancake. Great, now I've only got Michelangelo and he has almost no health remaining. After encountering a barricade I couldn't get past, I found some pizza I could farm. Okay, I'm still in it. Oh no, why is there another impossible jump here? I failed a few times to this, but I eventually realized that you just run over it Super Mario style. I was definitely overcomplicating that one. Back here I found some missiles, and these seem to be different from the secondary weapons I had been finding so far. Maybe I can use them to get past the barricade? But how do I use them? While I was trying to figure this out, I got flattened again. Well, there's another game over. Do I have more continues? Yep. With all my turtles back, I quickly realized that I actually spawned right next to a tank I completely missed before. Not only did this help me get around without getting squashed, it was the thing I needed to use the missiles, and with them, I was finally able to blast through that barricade. Okay, now I get it. This tank is kind of the whole purpose of level 3. After wandering around, falling off buildings, and collecting more missiles, I found my way to this awful room in the sewers. So something kind of annoying in this game is that when you hit the ceiling while jumping, you lose a ton of momentum. That's why those earlier jumps were so difficult. Well, thankfully, falling here doesn't actually make you lose any turtles, but you've got to restart the whole 2D section with each fall. After a handful of failed attempts, I realized I had to do these tiny jumps to make it across without bonking. The room was far from over after this jump though. There were plenty more jumps like this, and there were tons of enemies that could knock my turtles into the water in an instant. Oh, check out this spectacular failure. I somehow managed to miss the pizza and land in the water. Well, it took a handful of attempts, but thankfully I didn't lose any turtles to this part. There was also a full pizza refill at the end, so it was super easy to farm everyone back up to full health. Nice. Unfortunately, something super dumb happened in the next part. My controller was having issues during these Play Choice 10 games, and sometimes the right button was sticking. It happened here, and I ran right off the ledge, sending me to a part before the annoying sewer section. Come on. After successfully making the jump next time, I ran into the boss of Stage 3, Mecha Turtle. I think this is a character original to the game. He first fought like a clone of Leonardo, but he had a face too, and he started flying around and blasting me with missiles. I spammed the boomerang item and beat him on my first try. I rescued Master Splinter, and he told us to head to some kind of blimp to chase the enemy's helicopter. A blimp doesn't seem like the best method of transportation for that, but whatever, on to stage 4. Oh boy, this one was a big maze. We can see from the map here that this stage has a bunch of secluded areas and a ton of different sewer sections to wander through. Near the beginning, I found this random rope power-up that I used to cross a gap. At this point, the levels were starting to get a bit more tough. They just throw so many enemies at you, and some of these rooms had trickier platforming obstacles like these conveyor belts or these awkward magnets that only suck you in while you are jumping. Thank goodness you can farm pizza in this game. Oh man, there was this one section at the end that was so annoying. There were these moving death walls that would kill your turtles in one hit, and the last fall in particular was really awkward. It looked simple, but I just kept failing to fall down the hole, and if you mess up once, you lose a turtle and have to reset the whole area. Yeah, I got another game over here, and it turns out I had no more continues. Back to the start I go. Oh boy, this is gonna be one of those games, isn't it? Well, at least a lot of this game is just figuring out its tricks. I even got through the water stage this time without losing a single turtle. On this attempt though, I struggled way more with Mecha Turtle for some reason, and I ended up getting a game over to him. When I got back to the part with the moving walls, I decided to practice falling in the previous room since it had an identical layout, and man is it surprisingly tough to get this right. The strat I ended up using was bonk strats. I found that if I jumped on the edge, I would bonk onto the ceiling and be able to control my fall in a way that sent me right into the hole. Didn't think that annoying mechanic would actually come in handy. They threw another moving wall room afterwards, but my bonking strats worked again like a charm. After this part was the boss of stage 4, Big Mouser. Mousers are these little evil robots created by the TMNT villain Baxter Stockman. Humorously, Baxter himself doesn't even show up in this game. For this boss, I just had to hit its weak spot whenever it opened its mouth, and it went down pretty easily. After this, the turtles boarded that blimp I heard about and flew into the enemy base. Here, Splinter told me to go underground and find the Technodrome. The Technodrome is a mobile tank fortress from the 1987 TV show. Apparently, it's usually operated by a different villain named Krang, but I guess it's just owned by Shredder in this game. So this level is kind of interesting. You're sneaking around at night and trying to avoid the spotlights. There were 3 different spots the Technodrome could be in, but I had no idea which hole was the correct one. There were also some sheds here, and they were full of pizza and special weapons. There's one weapon here I really liked, and it looked like a scroll. The weapon shot out a straightforward beam that did a ton of damage. Man, these underground areas were kind of rough. The enemies were starting to become more difficult to get through unscathed. Luckily though, I found the Technodrome on my first try. The Technodrome itself was the boss here, and I didn't realize at first that you can destroy the thing on the front. I ended up taking a lot of damage figuring out where this thing's weak points were. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to pull through. I lost Raphael, and it sent me back to the start of the level. Yeesh. So while I was filling my resources back up in the sheds, I found Raphael tied up inside one of them. It turns out if a turtle loses all of his life, you can actually find him in certain parts of the stage to get him back. Kinda funny it took me this long to actually see the mechanic. Sadly, I lost Raphael again on the way back to the Technodrome, and this time he didn't show up in the cell. What a bummer. Well, I was one turtle short, but I managed to reach the Technodrome again. It was a bit chaotic, but through the power of Donatello's mighty bow staff, I finally beat this stage. Phew, okay, this is definitely starting to get a bit more tough. How much left is there? Well, I wasn't done with the Technodrome yet, because the next stage had me jumping directly into it and hunting down Shredder. My turtles were in rough shape, but I still had a whole entire continue. Maybe I can actually make it on this attempt? Yeesh, so the enemies here are tough. They've got a lot of health, and the game throws a bunch of them at you at once, so it's hard to stay alive. I got my first game over super quick. Alright, this is my last continue. Time to pull myself together. This entire level is 2D, and there's a couple of different paths you can take through it. I was trying to play super careful here, as I wanted to keep my turtles as healthy as I could for the final boss. In many cases, I was running past the enemies because they were just so tanky. However, everything came to a halt when I made it to the last corridor. The path forward gets smaller and smaller, and they throw these nasty jetpack guys everywhere. I tried my best, but after a missed swing, Donatello fell, and everything spiraled out of control from there. I got another game over on the last level, and I was sent back to the start of the game. Well, even though I wouldn't call the water level all that tough, this final Technodrome level makes up for it. Okay, my goal for the next run was to stock up on secondary weapons in the second to last level, particularly those scroll items since the attack was so strong. I somehow forgot the bonk strat for the moving wall part and lost a bunch of turtles here. Whoops. Well, my plan was to do the final 2 levels all in one swing, so I decided to take a quick game over first to get all my turtles back in the second to last level. Okay, time to grind. Filling up on weapons here was kind of tedious. There were plenty of enemies in the warehouses, so I had to spend a bunch of time re-getting pizza too. After stocking up on a bunch of scrolls and boomerangs, I challenged the Technodrome once again. Using the scrolls, I did a lot better on the Technodrome fight, meaning I entered the final stage with a lot more health. Okay, this is looking good. After some careful traversal, I made it to the final corridor with all of my turtles in good shape. Man, even with these power-ups, this room is brutal. I took a lot of hits, but finally I made it through. My turtles were pretty hurt though, and I still had the final boss. I really needed to beat this on my first try, because losing a turtle at any point in the Technodrome sends you back to the first room. Well, unsurprisingly, the final boss is a fight against Shredder. At first, I tried taking advantage of Donatello's range, but he was pretty quickly brought down to low health. Shoot, he's my best turtle, and now everyone is at low health. I'm pretty sure at this point if I get hit one more time, it's basically over. Maybe the scroll power-up can save the day? Well, it actually did. This move did a quarter of Shredder's health in a single hit, and after each shot, he got knocked back and stunned for a bit. This meant I was able to just stun lock him and take him out just like that. Yes, I did it. I beat Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So, after this was an ending cutscene where Master Splinter suddenly turned into a human. What the heck? I don't remember him actually being a human. Apparently, Splinter's backstory changes across the various series, and in the one I watched, he was just a mutated rat. Anyway, the game ended with everyone deciding to celebrate with pizza, of course. With that, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was complete. On to the review. Phew, what a game. I was expecting this one to be hard, but after finding the water level easy, I got my hopes up, only to have them crushed again by the Technodrome. The core mechanics are pretty fun, and having the 4 different turtles to swap between is a perfect fit for an action game like this. They definitely aren't balanced super well, but that can spice up the game in its own way too. The enemy spam was a bit much though, especially late game when the enemies started having a ton of health. In many of those late game rooms, it was better to just ignore the enemies entirely. The platforming in this game is mostly fine, although the bonking mechanic made certain challenges annoying, and the way you fall off ledges made that one section with the moving walls kind of rough too. It's not the smoothest feeling game I've played, but it's far from the worst. Also, the visuals are nice and colorful, and the music is pretty catchy too. Of course, once again, we've got to talk about the difficulty. Outside of some of the late game enemy spam, I generally didn't mind the difficulty in this one, although being sent back to the start when I ran out of continues was really annoying. After I learned the game better, most of the early game was really easy, so having to do the first few levels over again was kind of just tedious. I only ended up getting 2 complete game overs in the end though, so it's not like it was too bad, but maybe I'm just salty about that one time I game overed on the final level. All in all, it was still a fun time, but some awkward mechanics, late game enemy spam, and annoying game over punishments held this one back from making me really love it. I gave Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles a 7 out of 10. With Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles complete, I have now finished 94 out of the 154 NES games in the challenge, meaning I am now 61.04% of the way through all of the NES games. Thanks for watching the video. If you want to see more of these in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on the next one. Also leave a like if you enjoyed it, since it will help the channel grow and motivate me to continue this series. I hope I will see you in the next step of my quest to beat every Nintendo game.